Good evening and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School District School Committee meeting for Thursday, April 11th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. And the first item on our agenda is adjournment to executive session. We will roll call vote to adjourn to executive session pursuant to GLC 30A, Section 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares it. Regular open session to resume at approximately 6:30 p.m. Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Oh,
I need
no.
a motion.
Can I have a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you. Second. Mr. Clark? Ms. Gaines? Ms. Ebert-Long?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Gregg?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And we will resume at approximately 6:30. Good evening and welcome back to our regular session, coming out of executive session at 6:33. And next on our agenda is the MRHS student representative.
Good evening, school committee. I hope you are all well. Starting off with the arts, the school musical Beauty and the Beast, held on March 12th, 14th, and 15th, and 16th, captivated audience with its vibrant performances and engaging storytelling. Also, the concert band and the chorus delighted audiences with their Pops concert, which had the theme of the last 25 years of Broadway. And tonight, Monomoy is hosting the first ever Cape Cod Jazz Festival at 7 p.m. for $10. We have 5 Cape schools involved and have around 70 students in total participating in this event. On March 28th, our seniors celebrated a wonderful evening under the stars at the senior prom. The enchanting atmosphere and camaraderie among students made it a night to remember. The festivities continued after prom with an unforgettable after-party, providing students with a safe and enjoyable environment to unwind and create lasting memories. We thank everyone who contributed to making our prom happen, making one of the seniors' last major events at the high school. We also thank all of the parents who fundraised and hosted after prom for making such a memorable and a fun event. Spring sports have kicked off with enthusiasm and determination. Our student athletes are showcasing their skills and sportsmanship on the field, representing our school with pride and already earning several victories. And speaking of sports, on April 6th, last Friday, the Harlem Wizards visited the high school, drawing a huge crowd. It was an evening filled with laughter and excitement for the entire community. This past month, the high school also held its annual wellness fair, organized by Miss Yarnell, which provided students with valuable insights into maintaining their mental and physical well-being. There are interactive stations and educational resources. Through interactive stations and educational resources, students learn valuable strategies for self-care. Mandarin students also embarked on a cultural journey to Boston, immersing themselves in Chinese culture and language. They also visited Barnesville High School to foster cultural exchange and mutual understanding, enriching the educational experience for all involved. Lastly, as the school year winds down, so does the time seniors have left at Monomoy. Some final events include Senior Arts Night on May 9th, celebrating all of our visual media and performing arts seniors, which is conveniently on a school committee night. The band and chorus also have our last concert of the year on May 16th, and last but not least, graduation is on June 1st. We hope to see you all there. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, Talia. All right, moving right along to the approval of the minutes from our March 27th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Abstained. Okay. Next, we have public comment. Anyone for public comment? Okay. Moving right along to reports and discussion. Our first on the agenda is transportation bid. Mr. McMillan?
Just so you can see the bid. Can you make it bigger so we can... Right. Hey, good evening, school committee. Michael McMillan, school business manager. So this agenda topic is the district transportation services. So I give you like a preview of this at our last meeting, just because this is a big deal for the district. So we have been receiving our transportation services from Cape Cod Collaborative for the last 5 years. The agreement with the collaborative is ending this school year, and so we issued an invitation for bids to see if anybody else was interested in providing our services and providing those services, and really so that we could determine if the collaborative was still the best value for money for the district. So strictly speaking, because the collaborative is another public body, and the way the collaborative is structured is almost like part of the district, we don't have to go through a procurement process, but we chose to do that so that we could see, what other providers were out there, if people were interested, and what the costs and the service would look like if we did that. So we had the proposal from the collaborative, also created a proposal along the same lines as was requested from private sector contractors. Not exactly the same because they're a different animal, but they provided a proposal and we received 2 other bids, one from Lucini buses and one from Cape Destinations. So the collaborative was the lowest bid of the lowest total cost for the first 3 years of the contract. And so the recommendation here today is that the school committee approve that we enter into an agreement for a 3-year agreement with the collaborative with the option to extend for another couple of years as we have currently, as we're just coming to the end of the same sort of structure. So I guess, so, and I mean, I went into a bit more detail in the memo, which we just sent you today, which, apologies, it's so late. The process, the procurement only finished last week, so it's been a bit hectic pulling everything together and checking all the numbers. But so where we are with the collaborative, so the service we receive from the collaborative has been satisfactory for the last 5 years. We're getting the students to school, which is really our primary concern. We're getting the students to school on time, with a reasonably comfortable bus journey. We've had very few complaints, very few issues we've had to deal with, and we've had a good working relationship with the collaborative. So, but we wanted to make sure the money was about right. So when the numbers came in, the lowest bidder, which was Cape Destinations, very close. within $50,000, almost $50,000. I think it was about 3%. So it was very close to the collaborative's bid. So, but there would be some. So we kind of tested the collaborative's costs. So we now know that we're getting a reasonably good deal from the collaborative, and we're satisfied with the service that we're receiving. So there doesn't seem to be a strong case to change vendors at this point. So Mr. Richter, who is here from Cape Destinations, Mr. Richter from Cape Destinations emailed the school committee, and if everyone comes, I'll just address a couple of Mr. Richter's points that he raised. I would first say I was very grateful to Cape Destinations and Lucini Buses for submitting bids. A lot of work goes into it, and so it's difficult. The whole concept of the collaborative providing the service is kind of difficult. It's not a totally level playing field, because they're a public sector organisation who we work with. So I appreciate all the work that Cape Destinations and Lucini Buses did to put the bids together, and we work a lot with Cape Destinations, and I hope we will continue to do so, whatever happens from this process, and we appreciate all the support they give us. So in this email, Mr. Richter, if I'm pronouncing your name right, yes, okay, good. He raised a couple of points, which are all, I think, valid points. One of them, the first was around, so it is a different structure if we're contracting with a private vendor, and so if the private vendor fails to provide the service, so the buses don't get to school on time on a repeated basis, then we're able to fine the vendor. And so that provides a financial incentive for them to keep delivering the service. So obviously we don't fine the collaborative, because the collaborative, the collaborative is part of us, we're part of the collaborative. Fining them would just hurt ourselves. However, we have not found that we need a financial incentive to encourage the collaborative to do what we need them to do. From our experience thus far, over the last 5 years, is they have the same aims as we do. They want to get enough buses and enough drivers to get our students to school on time. I appreciate, and with a private sector vendor, I think you do want that financial incentive, but you never actually want to use it, because you want to make sure the buses are always getting there on time. So it's like just a kind of reminder that this is really important to the district, keep focused on this, but you don't actually ever want to be issuing those incentives, because that means the buses aren't running the way you want them to. And I think we talked about that in the pre-bid conference with the vendors, that really that's just there to focus everybody's minds and make the vendors aware of what your priorities are, but you don't really want to be using those penalties. And as I say, we have had a good relationship with the collaborative, and we have not felt the need to be issuing any kind of penalties or anything like that with the collaborative. The other point which was raised is that the Cape Destinations has a much broader operation, because they do much more than just school transportation, and they have a much wider number of drivers to draw on. And I am open to that, the importance of that, because getting enough drivers is the biggest challenge I've we face, and it's been the same in my previous districts, that getting enough bus drivers is a real challenge. The collaborative has been doing a good job of getting enough drivers. We have enough at the moment to get the buses to school. So I don't think that anybody has a magic bullet to fix this problem. I think whoever we're with, it'll continue to be a challenge. I appreciate Cape Destinations has additional structures, but they'll still face a lot of the challenges that we do. And as I say right now, we are just about, we always have enough drivers to get the students to school. And the final point, and I think also Cape Destinations, there would be new vendors, so they would be buying all new buses, and so yes, that would be a pleasant experience. But the buses right now we have they're older, they're definitely not as pleasant, just by the fact they're 5 years old at this point, but we do have spare vehicles, they are running fine, and it's doing its job. We don't have a problem with buses breaking down at the moment. So there's going to be some risk involved with changing vendors. There will be some costs involved just with the change organizationally, if not financially. And there's some risk involved because no other vendor has provided this service in over 5 years. So that does make me a little nervous. And my priority is to make sure the students get to school on time. That's what I want more than anything. I don't care who does it, I just want them there. So I guess we know the collaborative can do it. It's not perfect, but we know they've been able to do it for the last 5 years. We know the numbers. I agree that this process is difficult because the vendors have to bid on numbers which are on a bit of paper. They've not actually gone out there and driven the routes. They've not actually they've not timed all the routes. They just have to go in our numbers. So there's a lot of variability in what the final costs for like field trips and so on might be. But the numbers are really close, so there doesn't seem to be a financial driver to change vendors. So given there isn't a service one and there isn't a financial one, that's why we're recommending we stay with the collaborative.
Questions? Ms. Seibert-Long.
I have a couple, Michael. And I'm going to just lay out the questions and then let you answer them as best you can. One is bus ownership and replacement, and I just need to re-understand, because it's been 5 years. How we laid out the ownership of the buses, because ultimately we do pay for them through the collaborative. And we're paying them off. And just a reminder of how that functions, because at the end, we ultimately end up owning buses somehow.
So no, the collaborative owns the buses.
Collaborative owns the buses.
They took
So are we just leasing them?
The collaborative owns them and runs them.
Yep.
We just essentially they just pass the cost of it back on to us so that we pay the cost. But we don't own them at the end. The collaborative own them at the end.
Okay. So my next question is bus coordination. I know that we have an in-house person who does that job, who does the routes, and is that something that we would no longer have to be responsible for if we went with Cape Destinations or not? And then also, I know that there's a need for people to work on the Cape. I understand that. So the larger bandwidth is enticing. That's just my thought process.
Yes.
But do we have any data on people not showing up, having to, scatter to get a bus on the road, people stopping in the middle of the route and not driving the rest of the way, any incident, things like that? Like, do we have that data? Like, I don't even know how well it's going, other than you're telling me it's going somewhat smoothly, so.
Yeah, so let's think, in order. First
Sorry,
one,
I can repeat.
I'm trying to remember. The first thing was
Bus ownership.
coordinator. So bus ownership, the collaborative owns the buses.
Got it. So we pay into it, we pay X amount for our contract, but we end up with no bus at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But that would be the same for, and that would be the same for any vendor.
Correct.
Nobody's going to give us the buses at the end, but essentially they're going to pass on the cost. But to be honest, they're going to use them with the collaborative. We're going to use them until they have a low residual value, and then we're going to replace them.
Okay.
And so we probably would look to start replacing these buses in 3 years, and that would add a cost onto the collaboratives costs. So it would be an option for us to look at going out to bid then again in 3 years' time if we thought it was worthwhile. When we were, because we were re-upping with new buses, should higher costs, and then, vendors may be able to bring in new buses for lower costs if they have bigger capital expenditure than we do. So coordinator, so we have a coordinator. The bid documents were structured such that, the project or the service was structured that we would continue to have that person in district, whichever vendor we went with. So I think that we would continue to do that, whichever vendor we had. So the collaborative does produce the routes. We just advise on them and provide information. And really, you need somebody in the district who has access to all the student information, who can pull it together, who can help communicate with parents. So we would still have that position with the collaborative or with any vendor.
Okay.
And then, so can you get, so bus drivers, yes, I agree. Yes, I agree that, in my conversations with Raphael, I do appreciate the value of a bigger vendor, maybe to bring in more drivers, but it's still a little up in the air. We don't know for certain, and we do know for certain that the collaborative has had enough drivers for this year.
We have
So,
had
yeah.
enough.
So there was, I feel like, I don't have the data on, so there's not been, so it's funny because Scott and I the superintendent and I were reflecting on the number of calls we get with problems with the bus service, and the number is like 0, or we have very few issues are brought to our attention because the buses, by and large, get students to school on time. We did have a short period of a couple of days when there were a large number of drivers out, just coming out of COVID, when we were back in just after COVID. We had a few days, maybe like 2 or 3 days, when there was a number of drivers out, and we had to double up a couple of runs. So it has happened, and there's no way. And we do operate on very small margins with drivers. They all, like the collaborative, have some of their, their managers and their some of their staff will get in and drive a bus occasionally, and that's the backup. It's not perfect, but it's, but it's worked. And I definitely, I will admit to some level of, inertia, maybe. Like, we have a solution, it's working. It makes me nervous, the idea of changing, when I don't feel a real huge driver to do that.
I definitely feel the angst of changing something that's working.
Yeah.
Why fix it if it's broken? My only comment is that we're going to go into another 3-year contract, and a lot's going to change.
Yeah.
For the cost of buses from now till the next 3 years. So I don't want to then look back. It's that scary move. I don't want to then look back and go, we should have locked in 3 years ago, because now we're looking at
Yeah.
a lot more expensive. That's my only.
Yeah.
And you can go either way with it. You
Absolutely.
take the risk,
Yes.
or you stay put. There's no wrong or right. I
Yes.
think they're both, like you said, they're comparative.
I totally agree.
That's just my thought.
Yep, and I completely agree.
I think just in terms of data that I can recollect this year, I think it's been twice this year that we had, at the last moment, a driver, that we were without a driver for a run, either morning or afternoon, and had to do some doubling up, or had to do a second wave to get everybody. So it's fairly rare. I think the bigger challenge that we've heard, I think, in some conversations, is just the sports buses. Because sometimes there's not enough drivers to have then a couple spares to go and get students to sandwich and be able to do the regular runs. I think that has been perhaps one of the things that that over the length of the last contract, which started pre-COVID and has gotten us to the other side of COVID, that pre-COVID there were more folks in the labor force, period, I think, and we had more drivers to cover that those after-school things in addition to running the runs.
Do we have a plan to fix that going forward, or is that going to continue to be a shortfall?
I think it's going to depend on just numbers of drivers in the end.
And, so for things like field trips, we do go to other vendors to provide it. So that's the nice thing about field trips, is that, so we will ask the collaborative under this contract to provide a field trip driver, but if they're not able to, because, for example, overlaps with our school runs, then we can put it out to other, like the organizations like Cape Destinations or other vendors if they have drivers available, but they don't always. I mean, Cape Destinations often does, but we are not always able to get drivers to fill those places.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand the other
It's all
time.
right.
I'm just going to keep going.
Keep going.
The only other thing I would comment on is if we find that we're doing that repeatedly, it may be advantageous to do some type of a contract with a vendor we're using frequently for athletics
Yeah.
and, our
Yes.
drama or our music and or field trips to negotiate a contract and have that in place. It may be more advantageous financially for the district in the future if we feel like we're constantly doing that.
Yeah,
If we're
that's
not
a
going
great
to
idea.
shift.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was just going to address your earlier point about the sort of cliff in price. Like, so why? Because my other anxiety is I do hear that happens a lot with school districts. Every year we see on the business manager listserv, business managers saying, I've got to change my bus contract has just gone out, and it's like a 20% increase in costs, and it's driving district costs, and that also makes me nervous that will happen. I mean, the upside, and again, this is, I do have the upside with the collaboratives, I have a lot of a transparency over what's driving their costs, because they don't have they have no profit margin. They're just there to run the buses. So we get to see what's driving those costs, so there's fewer shocks. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Michael, and welcome to our meeting. Not in the best of circumstances, however, Michael, this is the nicest no I've heard all day. And none of them were easy to say. Thank you for your letter. And it's probably good news to the school committee that we now have not 2 bus companies in our district, but 2 that are operating within our sphere, so that as we come down the line and years pass awful quickly around here, that's a plus to us. So
I agree.
thank you for your interest and willingness to force Michael into explaining it for the 3rd time.
Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. First of all, are we having to vote on this tonight? Is that a definite?
No, you don't have to vote on it tonight. So, the only need to vote, the only timeline to vote is to give the vendor enough time to be able to get, partly because if it's going to be a new vendor, they would have to order buses, they'd have to buy buses in time to have them ready for September 1st when the work would start. So that was one reason to kind of, to go as quickly as we could, because we're already this is a little late in the game to be doing that. So I don't want to drag it out any longer. That saying, if we're staying with the collaborative, it's less urgent because the collaborative's ready to go, but that would prejudge its outcome of the vote. So the short answer is no, you don't have to vote right now.
Okay, because the question, and I just want to be fair, so I would be curious, because we just are seeing this letter, and it did come quite late this afternoon. So I'm just curious for 2 things here. I'd like to know, even though Cape Destinations, we've used them before, but what other school districts are they serving at this time? And I would like to know what they think about them. That's number 1. Number 2 is, bus driver, you can be a bus driver, but I'd also want to know, because it has been 3 years, I guess, or whatever, 5 years.
Yeah.
What is the specialized training with students? I would want to know, because that's, to me, is a little different than just a bus driver.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, for the vendors, that would be, other than the collaborative, because we know what they are and how they work. But for anybody new coming in, I would want to know, what school districts are you serving?
Yep.
I'd want to know what they think of you, what's, the customer service been and everything. And then what is the specialized training for drivers to work with students? Because you could have a fight break out in a bus. How do they handle that? So I want to know those things.
So I can give you some answers now and see
Okay.
what you think. So first of all, I'm just going to talk about Cape Destinations because they were the low bidder. I haven't checked the references for Lucini. But I did talk to Cape Tech, who the Cape Destinations provides bus services for, and they're very happy with the service. So they've had no problems, they're very happy, and they gave good readout on their experience. They've been with them for a long time, since, for multiple years, multiple contracts, and they're happy with them. In terms of training, so the bid documents requested a certain level of training. The bus companies had to provide, I think it's like an hour of training a month, so they would have like 10 sessions a year, at least 10 sessions a year, where they would do training on a whole range of issues, like student management and so on. I would say, we get into like what is the role of a bus driver, because primarily the role of the bus driver is to drive safely. And they really can't be in the job of trying to control fights or whatever. If there's fights going on, a lot of times instruction is to the bus driver is pull over, stop, and call for help, because they are really primarily there to drive safely. So they can't really be getting involved in arguments behind them. But the training is something that is required in the contract, and would be conducted monthly, and that's what the collaborative do right now. And it includes a whole bunch of things like, related to school bus driving.
All right, I think that was it, really. Yeah.
That's okay. I just had one more comment, and I don't know how accurate it is, but it's kind of what I'm gathering from the data that we do have. We're looking at a public company versus a private local company, and I'm a big advocate for private local companies, and I know that they're associated with other, DBA, Pilgrim Transit, Cape Cab, Funk Bus, Mayflower Trolley, etc. But to me, that also highlights that they're employing local, and they're also employing year-round. Which I can't speak to the bus drivers for the collaborative, but I don't know how often the collaborative employees are driving in the off season, if they're still being utilized full time. But to me, that's advantageous.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it's local and it's employing more than just the bus drivers actually. So
Yeah.
that is an appeal to me. So for me personally, I need a little bit more time to digest. I don't really want to vote on this tonight. I just see it's a potential vote.
Yeah.
And I would need to think about, Michael, having it come back, but with maybe some comparison. I don't know what part of the bid we really,
Yeah.
we don't really look at the
Yep.
bid.
Yeah.
But if we could put something together and we can gather a little bit more information. I know we've talked about quite a bit tonight, but I would like to explore it a little bit. And mainly,
Sure.
I'm driving with the local piece, the drivers, and also that 3-year contract.
Yeah.
Just watching the prices, everything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it may be advantageous to lock in right now at this. It may be more palpable than 3 years from now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So yes, I think that makes absolute sense to wait to the next meeting to vote. Obviously, we don't want to wait too long, because if we do decide to change, then
Right.
you give that vendor enough time.
I would say our next meeting, I would
Yeah.
be fine voting, like, this is a first and
Yeah.
a second,
Yes.
like,
We
I
can
wouldn't go any
digest
farther
this.
than that, yeah.
Yes.
I would say the collaborative also employs local people. So they're employing people on the Cape. They run, they're also educating our students. So there is definitely a deep local connection between the collaborative and the community as well. Not this community, but the Cape Cod community and the drivers. Some of the drivers live in and around these areas as well. But yes, absolutely. I can pull it. So when the way the bid was structured was, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail at the next meeting if you like, but vendors had to bid on the general education, the special education, the late bus, summer work, and field trips, and athletics. And then all those numbers were added up, and that's how you get to the total.
So we can break that down for us.
Yeah, so I can provide that. So that was in the bids.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes,
Thank
and
you,
just-
Michael.
Just, I know you said Cape Tech, but if there's anybody else, can you please include any other school districts other than Cape Tech? Can you
Yeah,
include
absolutely.
that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is superintendent goals, reflection, and self-assessment. Oh, you're Dr. Carpenter.
I'll start with.
He is.
I'll start with the same conversation I had with the superintendent evaluation subcommittee last week, where, so I'm providing you at least a reflection on my goals and a self-assessment, but it's also, I think this for me is a very interesting, odd, weird, bizarre year. Like I've never in my nearly 30-year career injured myself and found myself, out, or at least back to virtual. And I tell people my least favorite thing of my professional career were the COVID years and all the virtual meetings, and to find myself back, having to be back there. And I think on my end, I have like great guilt with the ramifications of being injured, because I know when I'm out, it means that Robin has more work. When I'm out, it means Michael has more work, Melissa has more work, Joy has more work, Leah has more work. It's just not lost on me that Scott being the virtual box for strategic planning's not the same as Scott being in the room. And so I just want to go into a self-reflection with that in mind, because I haven't been the superintendent I wanted to be at the beginning of the year, and I am very eager to get my strength back to be the superintendent that I want to be, because it eats at me if I'm delegating to Robin because I'm at physical therapy, or delegating to Michael. And I'm just also grateful that I've got great people between the two of them, and Melissa and Joy and Leah, who I work most closely with, that I think the sad thing is superintendent metaphorically got hit by a bus and the district didn't skip a beat. I think that's the good news, but I'm getting back, my strength's getting back. I have hopefully one last procedure on Tuesday to get the flexibility back in my leg, and then I can get back to being who I've always been, rather than how I'm kind of stuck now. So when it comes to standards for a superintendent, what you evaluate a superintendent on, one of the first standards, instructional leadership, and I'm somebody who believes that that a superintendent should be getting into classrooms, and I was able to get into classrooms prior to the accident, and am looking forward to being able to have the stamina to be getting back into classrooms routinely. It's been nice to kind of have a trip through each one of the buildings, but I'm still building that stamina. I think the easiest thing to do over the last 3 months, the second standard talks about management and operations, and I think we've been able to do negotiations and everything else. And I've been able to kind of fill in that role virtually, but it also, I think it was so much more meaningful to have the superintendent actually in the room at the negotiating table, and not having Robin carry me around on a laptop. And then the third standard deals with family engagement. There's a couple of my goals that are directly family engagement, community engagement things. And again, far more easier to be involved with strategic planning when the superintendent can be in the room than when the superintendent was a talking head on a computer. And the last one being professional culture, which is deals with reflective practice, high expectations, and fostering a culture within the district of continuous learning. I think we've been able to manage that despite my injury. But in terms of my goals, one of my goals was to engage in a professional development opportunity with an organization called Leading Now. Unfortunately, that program had days where there was a two-day in-person kickoff in January when I was at the worst of, where I was recovering from a broken ankle but didn't have the knee put back together yet. So I've been accepted into their cohort, and we'll be going through that in-person piece come September, and we'll be doing that in the fall of this year. But I also wanted to share with people that just because I wasn't able to do that professional development, it's not like I didn't do other professional development things. I've been involved as a chair on NEASC visits. I did one just before my accident, and I have one that I will be doing for a day and a half at the end of this month. And then on April 27th, I'll also be attending the day-long Ideas Anti-Racist Education Conference. So there's professional development happening. It's just different than how I intended it on the front end. One of the things I had for my second was sort of a continuation of a program that we had started last year, wanting to solicit retirees and empty nesters in our communities who would be interested in mentoring some of our students along in the college process. Particularly, we've got a number of families in our communities where their children would be the first ones in their families to head off to college, and to really support that process. So again, we were able to get that kind of kicked off on the front side of my accident. Joy stepped in and did yeoman's work there, and it's continuing to move forward. So we've got students paired with mentors. We've got students that have been working with mentors who, one of them's a senior and has been accepted into a college next year. And it was, I literally the weekend before my accident, I was meeting with that student and his father at a Starbucks in Hyannis, and the student was telling me his dream, and the father was like, I don't think we can do this. And it's been nice to go and see that, that with some guidance and some mentorship, that that there's a reality for this student out there. Some of one of the student learning goals deals with just trying to bolster the success of what we want it to do with our sort of curriculum office. And while I haven't been able to have the in-person meetings that I had hoped to have throughout this, Lee has done a great job of making sure that my calendar was scheduled with a lot of virtual meetings with the principals through this process, and I've been spending a lot of time virtually, and now thankfully back to in person with Robin, talking about curriculum and the direction that we're going. On the district improvement goal number 1, it's to work with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Advisory Committee. Again, this was one of those areas where it was nice to be fully in person on the front end of this, and again, Joy stepping in and doing yeoman's work, and Robin sort of joining in on that effort as well, to continue moving that forward. And it's been nice to finally be back in person with the group. At this last meeting, the discussion was about a book group, and we might want to have a discussion with the school committee about being part of that book group study on building a culture of dignity within a school, and again, I think it would be something good for all of us. The second district improvement goal dealt with supporting the development of the strategic plan. Again, I think we were firing on all cylinders, and then the superintendent goes down. And again, I think Robin and Joy greatly helped this one move forward while I was not able to be there in person. Was nice to be at least able to be back in person and thank everyone at their last meeting. And I think we can all be quite proud of the product that we were able to bring to the school committee to be voted on. And then the last of the district improvement goals was just trying to focus on the reality that we saw at the beginning of the school year with the transition in our technology office. And we saw that we were able to go and hire somebody great to replace Jim Birchfield in that role, while also retaining, I think, the best data specialist that in this region of Massachusetts. So I think we're in really good shape when it comes to our technology office. So that's just my quick update on where things are, and I definitely don't want to leave out putting kudos where they are deserved.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm wondering, we have superintendent evaluation subcommittee report. Do we want to just jump there for a minute, just to keep it flowing?
Sure, if everybody's okay. So let me just ask a quick question, and I apologize if is there a self-assess, I know you've gone over your reflections.
I haven't done the
Oh, you have, that's
the
what I was
rubric
looking for.
yet.
Okay, so you have not done that
I'll send that
yet.
to you.
Okay. All right, because we might need that, actually. Yeah, I think, all right, the reason, okay, so let me just back up and just say that the super eval, it sounds really loud, super eval met last week, our committee, on the 3rd, and Dr. Carpenter shared with us the update that all of you have heard this evening. Oh, that's why, thank you. So that piece has been done. So the next step, and I think we might be missing just a little piece, is in order to do our piece, I think we will need the rubric from you, because we had discussed a timeline, and let me just go over that timeline real quickly, because I'm just making sure that it's still going to work. And we have we've got 2 more meetings. All right. Yeah, so today, all right, so we're doing this bit, and we just listened to Dr. Carpenter's reflections. Then we have on the 25th is our next school committee meeting, and then the 9th. So what we talked about last week was having Dr. Carpenter share with you tonight his reflections, of which he has, and we thought the rubric might be shared tonight, but it looks like we don't have it. So because the timeline we were talking about was that we would hear the reflection tonight, we would get the rubric. Dr. Carpenter has an opportunity to do his own, I'm calling it an assessment or an evaluation, but his own rubric. And then taking that plus the reflection, plus our own thoughts, and working, and all of you have this in your packet, and working on our own evaluations. And our thought was we would have that due to Betty by April 18th, and Betty and I would work together and then bring back a first read to all of you on the 25th with that opportunity to read your own that night, and then we would final vote. However, that being said, I don't know if this is without the rubric.
I can help.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yes.
I can help. So typically in this meeting, he does what he just did, but we would also have the end cycle in here, and we would have his handout that has his summatives in them highlighted, which is what you use to complete the evaluation. So what the subcommittee's gonna,
Looks like
that
this.
one, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like
So what
this.
the subcommittee's going to do, what she's gonna tell you tonight is she's gonna go over how to do the evaluation, including all the documents that should be in our packet, but we can email those out, it's fine, because we don't normally review that in this meeting, so it's okay that it's not in the packet, because we can just, we'll have them electronically emailed to everyone, and if they need a paper copy, they can see Leah, but this will be emailed to them, that will be emailed to them, so they'll have it to do it. And then what she'll talk about is the deadline to get it to Betty, so that on our meeting on the 25th,
Yes.
the summative, Betty will prepare the summative and have that in our packet for all of us to go over. At that time, the individual school committee member has the opportunity to read their individual summatives or give whatever comment they would like about the process or about Dr. Carpenter over the year, and then Betty will read the summative that she has prepared based on all of our evaluations. And then at the next meeting, we will vote on that. I've done it a few times.
Yes, you have.
So I think we're okay that we don't have this in the packet, as long as Leah can make sure to email this and email the, I keep forgetting what it's called.
It's
The rubric.
The rubric,
The
yeah.
rubric,
The rubric
yes.
with his comments in it. And then we can have that completed, and then I'll
Yeah.
let Tina go from here when she wants it to her by.
Yeah, so I guess, and thank you for that, because I was just wondering, all right, so if we email after this meeting, which certainly we can do, if you've got it ready, does that give us enough time? Because when is the 18th? What day is that off top? Is that Thursday? So that's 1 week. We are going into spring break. That doesn't affect me anymore. I don't have kids in the school system. But I just wanted to be mindful that others of you might have spring break plans. And so does that work for everyone if we were to email the rubric? Because you will need that to kind of go, in order to do your own evaluation, you're going to need to see and to go and look at what Dr. Carpenter has done and fill out your own based on what your thoughts are. You know, do you agree with his assessment? Do you not? Do you want to take him higher, lower, whatever? Does that give you all enough time, I guess is my question.
Yeah, and I think my comment on that would be, what is the timeline that we can get the rubric by? And that will impact whether we think we have enough time, because what the other problem is if we don't feel like we have enough time to get the rubric and do this, it pushes our vote out to May 9th. And the problem with doing that is that you already have newly elected members, which we've run into before here, and that those that have gone didn't have the they can have their rubric in, and they can have their evaluation in, but they're not actually here for the vote on the evaluation.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So-
Dr. Carpenter, when
We
do
can get
you,
it sent out tomorrow.
So is that, okay, as long as that works for everybody.
perfect.
And the
So just-
timeline for the 18th is.
Yeah, and so that would be the 18th, so that gives you all a week, and Betty, you're still okay with the April 18th date with everything coming to you, and then Betty and I'll work together, and we're gonna take a look at all of your ratings, your comments. Betty and I will sit down, we'll average them out, and then always the goal is to, because you're gonna have an opportunity to write a little paragraph, a little summary, and then we're gonna look at the summary with the intention of trying to capture something from everyone, of which we'll put in the group summary.
Correct.
So it will take Betty and me, whatever, a few days to take a look and average everything out, write the summary for the group, and then we're going to return in front of you on the 25th with the group summary, of which Betty will present with the group ratings based on the average, and then with our group summary based on comments, and you all will have an opportunity to read your own, like you can say, this is what I've rated the superintendent, these are my comments. You'll have that opportunity to share it before Betty goes into the group summary. Does that make sense? Okay. And so with what we're going to send out to you, we're going to send you a fillable form. You got it here, but we're going to email it too, so you can just type right into it. We'll send the rubric out.
Ms. Davis, I think we have to type right into it. I don't
Oh, we
think,
have to? Is that now the
Right.
rule?
don't we have to do the digital version?
No, not necessarily. If you want to fill it up, that's fine. It depends on how you want to collect the information.
Okay, all right. I
But
would,
you have to do, we used to stop at the first 3 pages, but you have to do the full.
Yes.
so
you have
that's
to do
it.
all
You have
of
to
it
do
now.
the completed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it will be fully fillable.
Yeah, it's fully
Yeah, so that
fillable.
copy, I think that's what you're holding up.
Yeah.
There's a black and white version of the fillable in your packets.
Oh,
I
this
will
is
email
mine.
that to you,
Yes.
so you can do it either way.
Yep.
Some people prefer to handwrite.
Yep, yeah,
That sounds my first.
yeah.
Just the completed.
All right, so all of this is coming to you, but in order to guide your own ratings, you're going to be working off Dr. Carpenter's reflections, his assessment, and then your own thoughts about everything. And if you have any questions, you can reach out. Terry?
Mr. Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder, April 25th will be a preparation of the evaluation by you and Betty.
Yeah, so April 18th will be the deadline for emailing Betty your fillable, or your form. Yeah, so April 18th, which is a week, next Thursday,
And then we will be sharing our own evaluations on,
the 25th.
okay, so the 18th is a deadline for me to finish the summative going.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. And then on the 25th, you'll have an opportunity individually. You don't have to do it, but typically everyone does. But if you want to pass, you can pass. And then you can do your own quick evaluation. And then after that's done, Betty will read it on behalf of the group. And then we'll come back on the 9th for a final vote. So it'll be like a first read, second read.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Does that make sense?
It's going to be great.
Yeah. And for anybody that's still fairly new or needs a refresher, I also will share with Leah a webinar.
Point at me like I'm going to help him.
A webinar. It's only an hour, and it will walk you through. It's done by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and it walks you through visually everything. So if you just need that reminder, grab yourself a beverage, sit down, watch the webinar, and then fill out your form. Okay? All righty.
All right, thank you
you.
very much.
Share out that form this evening.
And Leah will share out the form this evening for anyone who is eager to start tonight.
Yes.
I will also offer that if anyone has a hard copy that they want me to pick up and get to the end user, I'm happy to do that. If we're going to do hard copies, I can be the collector of those.
Okay.
Excellent, I'll be in North Carolina. Can you pick that up?
No.
You courier.
All right, moving right along to the public safety and school district drills from March 30th, 2024. Are you,
I'll defer, I'm going to push your button. I'll defer to public safety.
Okay, so we did a district-wide drill, both police departments, both fire departments, community members. This was just a large-scale drill to see, as a district, how we would respond to an active shooter. We did it here. So without getting into details, a lot of things went really well, and there's some things we need to work on. But we're going to do these like every spring, every fall. But the feedback from the guys who did it and everything was great. A really good experience. So hopefully, obviously, we never need to use it or do it, but it was really good training.
excellent. Dr. Carpenter, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the, some of the things that were, I think, impressive on, I was there, with Joy and a number of our staff, and I mean, I have never seen so many police officers and firefighters at one place to do a training. I mean, it was incredible that both towns committed that resource to doing it. And it was also, I think, really good to hear, that, Captain Tavano with Chatham, Chief Tavano, sorry, with Chatham Fire, was just sharing that, that just the time that it took, for the various stages kept getting faster and faster. Like the more public safety knew our building, the faster the response. And once they were here, I also shared out with everybody at the end just a sincere thanks, not just on behalf of our school district and our families and our children, our staff, but the sad reality of what we were practicing is completely transferable to anywhere. It not just a school. Sadly, these things happen in supermarkets and office buildings and and parades and and that same thing that they were working on it's just different location, but how can we go and provide the best, response for, for our two towns? So I was just really pleased with the effort and just happy to open our doors to public safety and have them train here.
Excellent. Any questions? Wonderful. Next on our agenda is Chatham Elementary School Student Activity Account Transfer. Mr. McMillan?
So this is a request to transfer funds for one of the, between Chatham Elementary School student activity funds. So we have a number of student activity accounts set up for each school, and within that we have sort of sub-accounts, we call them funds. At the Chatham Elementary School, they have one set up for the yearbook, but they haven't had a yearbook in many years, and they don't have one planned for this year, but they have $2,888 in that account. So they would like to transfer some of those funds out of the yearbook account into the Lighthouse Fund, which only has a couple of $100 in it at the moment, and then they would like to use those funds to pay for supplies for their upcoming field day. So we don't really have a specific process for transferring funds between student activity accounts because it doesn't happen very often. But normally, if we close a fund down, then if we close an activity down, all the funds move into the Lighthouse account, and it has to be approved by school committee in some situations. So we're following a similar process here.
Okay. Any questions? We have a motion? Ms. Seibert-Long?
Surprised I don't have a yearbook anymore.
I know.
I move that the amount of $1,800 is transferred from the Chatham Elementary School Yearbook Student Activity Fund to the Chatham Elementary School Lighthouse Student Activity Fund.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, moving right along to subcommittee representative and liaison reports. The first up is negotiation subcommittee, and without Scotty present this evening, I will just let you know that negotiations is moving right along. We are feeling pretty confident about 2 of the units, and we will move into working with the 3rd unit, and hopefully it will go as smoothly. So continue to plug along. We did already have the superintendent evaluation subcommittee report, and we have a policy subcommittee report. Ms. Gray?
We do. So we met on April 2nd. We reviewed the language in the 2 policies that we had discussed at our last meeting and clarified the language in those policies. They are included in the packet. The question, well, I'll move on to those in a moment. And then we discussed our topics for May and June and getting up a schedule for policy review for the upcoming year as well.
Excellent. All right, on to Dr. Carpenter's superintendent report.
Just a couple things. First of all, you've never a dull moment to awake, what was it, yesterday morning to a, sort of like a news thing that there was a don't drink the water advisory in Harwich, and, having to pivot that morning before school to make sure that we were, having the high school and Harwich Elementary School where people weren't drinking from water fountains, and that our kitchen staff wasn't using water in how they would prepare food, so that you weren't using tap water to go make pasta or rice. And to have Michael working with Rick Travers to go and get bottled water, to the buildings, so really pleased on how quickly we're able to go and have that happen. And it was also nice to see by the end of yesterday that it's now just contained to North Harwich, which means that it's completely gone. So. So then North Harwich and now completely gone. So, we were able to at least today be back to normal with the, with the schools and the water, use of water. in terms of just 3 quick recognitions. First, we'd like to thank the Garden Club of Hyannis for their mini grant, the amount of $500 to the High School Climate Action Club to be used towards educational programs. Next, that our high school teacher, Lizzie Sheptick, was awarded the William Spratt Award for Excellence in Teaching Secondary Social Studies from the Massachusetts Council of Social Studies. She'll be presented with her award in May at their organization's award ceremony. And then finally, last week at the MTA Educational Support Personnel Conference in Falmouth, our own Cindy Gushy was recognized for her 10 years of service on the MTA's ESP committee, and she was presented with the statewide ESP award for her service. So congratulations, Cindy. That's it.
That's it? Okay. Excellent. Okay, so then we just have one action item left, the second reading of some policies, and we did bring 2 back for minor changes. So, Ms. Gray, you gonna just kind of review it quick?
Yeah, I will highlight real quick the 2 policies that that I mentioned earlier. There was some question about the language in terms of the 150 miles, and I believe it is it 13A? In domestic late night or overnight trips. I believe it was 13B. And so Melissa cleared up the language there to clarify on what she meant. Late night trips for over 150 miles, the effort thing would be made. And then transportation under athletic trips, 8B. For late night over 150, all efforts will be made to use commercial motor coaches. So that was the language we needed to clarify from the last meeting.
And the swimming.
Oh, is the swimming in there too?
Well, just that, there was a question about the waiver for swimming
Oh, yes.
and needing to have more clarity, and when we discussed it with Melissa, that is really more procedural, so it doesn't go in the policy, but it is something that is required, but it falls under the procedures that they have to follow in order to go on these field trips.
Okay.
So it is there, it's just in a different place.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
And then the packet is the rest of the files, the policies that are listed on the agenda for second reading.
So with those small changes, if we're okay to include those 2, all 5 are in the packet of policies provided. Do I have a motion for the second read of all of them? Ms. Gray?
I would like to make a motion to approve the policy files that are included in our packet.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. We have had the presentations of warrants, so I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay. Have a lovely evening, everyone.